What's going on, Headliner Nation? Kyle back with the Fantasy Headliners, and it's time to dive into my Week 2 rankings for wide receivers. If you haven't caught it yet, make sure you also go back and watch the start and sit video for wide receivers to pick up on some of that information there. But you're going to notice that there's been a few changes. If you've already watched that episode, I've had to make a slight adjustment to my rankings and also some start and sits this week based on more news that has come out since I recorded that. So make sure you pay attention to the entire video because we've got some major changes at wide receiver so far, and we need to get ourselves ready for week 2. So buckle up, Headliner Nation, and let's jump into it. All right, Headliner Nation, starting at 30 and working our way back up to 1. Number 30 is going to be Emmanuel Sanders for me this week. Definitely could see him taking a step forward with there being no Michael Thomas right now due to that injury, but we'll see what happens because Drew Brees has a ton of weapons around him. Emmanuel Sanders kind of being that savvy vet at wide receiver. Drew Brees could be looking his way quite a bit to begin with, but don't forget, if you follow me on Twitter the other day, I did tweet this out, that Robbie Anderson absolutely burned Las Vegas last week as kind of being that deep man, that go route, the guy that was going to be the big play dude down the field. Well, he was able to beat Las Vegas down the field quite a bit. Tre'Quan Smith fits that role a little bit more than what Emmanuel Sanders does. So don't be surprised if Tre'Quan Smith has a good game. But Jared Cook was really the guy last week in the pass catching game as a whole. I definitely expect him to be wholeheartedly involved. And that's why I don't have Sanders much higher than 30, because you're still going to have Kamara. You're still going to be going to Jared Cook quite a bit. And then I also think Tre'Quan Smith could have some big plays as well. So Emmanuel Sanders doesn't go much higher than that for me. Jameson Crowder at number 29, talked about him all offseason long. Ladies and gentlemen, if you drafted him, picked him up off waivers or whatever, he returned some excellent value for you last week. Expect a lot of the same things to happen. He can win in the slot, one of the best slot receivers in the NFL right now. Continue to put him in your lineup on a weekly basis. At number 28 and number 27, we're going to talk about some teammates. Got a couple of pairs of teammates to talk about in this area, but we're going to be talking about AJ Green and Tyler Boyd. Now, I have them really right next to each other because quite honestly, it could be either way. I think Tyler Boyd could be a little bit safer, or excuse me, I think AJ Green could be a little bit safer. I think Tyler Boyd could have a little bit more upside this week. If you have either of them, I would play them. If you have both of them for some reason, it kind of depends on what you're looking for. If your roster has a little bit more boom than bust this week, then maybe you do play it a little bit more safe and go with an AJ Green. If you need the help, if you're missing some guys, if you're projected to lose by quite a bit, then you can roll Tyler Boyd out there and hope for some extra help from him. But I think these guys could end up finishing right next to each other against this Cleveland secondary that's still banged up. But I think we're going to see them running the ball with Joe Mixon quite a bit this week as well. So they're not going too much higher than me for that because, again, keep in mind, we're going to be, it could be a situation where they're splitting a lot. Maybe you see another wide receiver step forward. CJ, who's your mama, had a decent amount of targets last week. Mixon as well, a little bit used more this week. So I think these guys, while they could finish as high as maybe 21-19 as well, is kind of what I was looking at. I'm a little bit lower than that right now just because of those other factors with it. Michael Gallup got him at 26, could have a good game this week, but I expect CeeDee Lamb to get moving a little bit more as well. So Michael Gallup's ceiling probably capped because of that. Yep, he's got that big playability, can go down the field. Maybe he only has a couple of catches for 50 or 60 yards. Maybe he does score a touchdown, but it's the volume that worries me, not having him see all the volume that maybe he saw last year. Will Fuller, again, if you own him, you play him. He's healthy right now, put him out there. The matchup is not as favorable this week as it was last week, but I'm still rolling him out there, especially if he's more of like a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3. Marquise Brown, another guy. Don't love the matchup as much this week. I think he could end up seeing quite a bit of cornerback 1 status this week, but someone else might end up stepping up around him. But I'm still going to put him in again as a wide receiver 2. Looks good, looks healthy, looks ready to roll. Going to keep rolling him out there. The other set of teammates that I have in this set of rankings, Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. Now, Tyler Lockett I do have a little bit higher right now just because I think that DK Metcalf is the one that's going to see Gilmore a little bit more than what Lockett does. So I still think both of these guys, DK Metcalf a little bit safer in terms of the amount of volume that comes his way, and Tyler Lockett being the guy that's a little bit maybe more boom or bust, more upside though than what Metcalf may have this week, especially if Lockett sees cornerback 2 status instead of cornerback 1 status. Also, it depends on who they can get in and out of the slot. So Tyler Lockett, I think, might see the slot a little bit more this week. If he does, then I think he sees a little bit more volume in terms of targets as well. But it's going to be kind of a crapshoot with these two this week. It is still a pretty good pass defense there in New England. I expect them to run the ball quite a bit, though. Get back to running the football this week. It limits both of their upsides. And then, of course, T.Y. Hilton sandwiched right in there between those two. We're going to talk about one of his teammates here in a minute. Now at number 20 for me, Odell Beckham Jr. And why do I have this picture of Odell Beckham Jr. right now? Because I feel like that's how most of us look when we watch him play, especially when he's on our fantasy teams. Now, OBJ was a sit for me, and Jarvis Landry was a start if you watched my start and sit video. However, I'm switching that up, and that becomes off the tail of finding out that Jarvis Landry might be feeling it in that hip a little bit this week. So he did not practice the other day because of just because of rest, I believe. I don't think it was necessarily anything too worrisome on that hip. However, now that as the week has gone on, listening to it a little bit more, reading into it a little bit more, how good is he going to be for tonight? Is he going to be limited again? He was supposed to be on a limited snap count last week. Is he going to be limited again this week? That's why I'm going to bump Odell Beckham Jr. up till 20. I like this matchup for him a little bit more than Jarvis Landry now. The slot corner for the Cincinnati Bengals may be their best corner on the team. He is a guy that plays very well in man coverage and could really stick on Jarvis Landry, especially some of that explosiveness is missing tonight. If he is a little bit hampered coming back on a short week, I think that could be a downfall to Jarvis Landry. So I'm actually switching it up now based on that new information from Jarvis Landry. And again, ladies and gentlemen, this is why it's important that you listen to both episodes so you can understand that, hey, has anything changed from the time start and sit came out? That's why we do 2 different episodes. So we can kind of go through it to begin with, and then we finalize it a little bit more after we get more information from the week. So OBJ jumping up into my top 20. Keenan Allen, would have loved to see a better performance out of him last week. I still think he can have a good performance this week. I'm just tempering expectations with the Los Angeles Chargers a little bit more. You're going to realize I don't have Mike Williams listed in here. Mike Williams for me is still kind of a boom or bust guy, but it's not because I don't like Mike Williams. Mike Williams for me was an under the radar bounce back this year. Okay, he was a guy that I really liked to bounce back and have a good season. Then he got hurt, ended up being ready for week 1. So is he going to be a little bit sore this week after trying to come back last week? We'll see. I'm just playing it cautious. If he can come out and have another decent game, if Tyrod Taylor can get the ball to him down the field, then Mike Williams is going to start working his way into my top 30 each week. But for right now, he's just outside of it. As a flex option, wide receiver 3, I'm A-okay with Mike Williams. But let's move on from that now. I know I talked about Mike Williams more than Keenan Allen right there, but Keenan Allen coming in at number 19 for me. My Manscaped must start for the week that I talked about in my start and sit video is Paris Campbell from the Indianapolis Colts. Man, am I liking some Paris Campbell this week. Last week against Minnesota, Devontae Adams and Allen Lazard, who had the most snaps in the slot, caught 9 of 9 targets for 114 yards. The Minnesota slot corner, Carson Datzler, he's not what you would see as a prototypical slot corner. He cannot play man-to-man very well because he's typically going to run slower than a majority of the wide receivers he plays against, which will include Paris Campbell this week. Paris Campbell has inserted himself firmly as the wide receiver 2, saw a majority of his snaps, actually basically all of his snaps out of the slot last week. An explosive athlete that could continue to out-target T.Y. Hilton moving forward. Now, I still got T.Y. Hilton just a little bit above just a little bit above Paris Campbell. Sorry, I was looking at 2 different things there. Just a little bit below Paris Campbell. But Paris Campbell could end up separating himself very, very soon. And even though T.Y. Hilton on the outside could be a big playmaker for them, Paris Campbell could be the guy on the inside. A little bit kind of like Jamison Crowder, right? This is a guy that we know is going to get peppered with a lot of targets. He's going to see that consistently from his quarterback. That's what Paris Campbell could end up turning into. Cooper Kupp at number 17 for me. I'm getting a lot of questions about Cooper Kupp. Should I play him or not? Cooper Kupp, for me, if you own him, you're still going to play him this week. I have absolutely no worries about Cooper Kupp at this moment. Now, the one thing I'm going to continue to eye on him, though, is he hasn't been the best since they moved to 12 personnel. However, Gerald Everett, dealing with a little bit of a back injury, should be fine this week. But with the emergence of Van Jefferson, do they go back to playing more 3 wide receiver sets? It's something to monitor. If they do, Cooper Kupp is going to end up crossing up into that wide receiver 1 status again very soon. But as of right now, he's just kind of outside of it because his numbers haven't looked great since the switch to 12 personnel. But again, with the emergence of Van Jefferson, maybe over the coming weeks, Sean McVay says, no, we got to get back to this. They move back to it. Cooper Kupp goes back to the slot where he's most comfortable, and then that's where we get him moving forward. At number 16, Stefon Diggs. He's kind of moved up my board a little bit more this week because of the John Brown foot injury. They go up against Miami. The reason that Stefon Diggs is at 16 for me isn't because he's going to play bad, but it's because I think Buffalo could put it on Miami pretty early this week, and if they do, you could see them running the ball a lot in the second half. So Stefon Diggs, to me, would really have to make up some of that ground in the first half because the second half might not see as many targets come his way. That's why I'm just a little bit lower on Stefon Diggs and have him at 16 right now. Should still be safe to play, though. So if you own him, play him. DJ Moore at number 15. Robbie Anderson had the big week last week. That's going to help DJ Moore. Hopefully Robbie Anderson continues to play well. DJ Moore then becomes a guy that in the middle of the field will be just fine. But it was one of my concerns. Can Teddy Bridgewater go deep down the field on a consistent basis? He showed us in week 1 that he can. If he can keep doing that, perfect, because then that opens up a lot of space for DJ Moore in those intermediate routes. Terry McLaurin at number 14. Expect them to have to throw the ball quite a bit against Arizona this week. Terry McLaurin, a little bit of a bounce back. I mean, wasn't a bad week last week, but we'd like to see some of those bigger plays and those touchdowns again, right? DJ Chark going up against Tennessee. Going to put DJ Chark here just outside of wide receiver 1 territory, just because, again, last week, I talked about this on the Start and Sit show. Last week, we saw Keelan Cole kind of come up and be that guy that was the big play threat last week. So I could maybe a little bit of bouncing back and forth. You know, as Keelan Cole maybe, inserts himself as the wide receiver 2 on that team. And then, of course, you get Shenault again, who's running in a lot of different patterns, whether it being out of the slot, out wide, in the backfield, wildcat QB, whatever it may be. As this team starts to spread it around a little bit more, then that helps DJ Chark. So let's look for that this week. A.J. Brown coming in at number 12. Yeah, we would have liked to see a better week last week from him, but it was close. It was close. But some of those inconsistencies that I talked about over the offseason could be a concern. A.J. Brown gets Jacksonville this week, though. So, again, the only reason he's not a little bit higher, just like Stefon Diggs at this point, what's going to happen with this game against Tennessee? Against Jacksonville, does Tennessee get up a little bit early? Jacksonville played really well last week. If they get up early, do they pound the ball with Derrick Henry? Does that mean A.J. Brown doesn't see some of those plays deep? So that's my only concern with him this week, but still got him right there at the end of my wide receiver 1s. Mike Evans at number 11, another guy that I've had to change since my Start and Sit video. Why? Chris Godwin is in the concussion protocol, and unfortunately that video came out about 15 minutes before it was announced. Had I known, I would have switched things up. I didn't know, came out, and, well, here we are. Mike Evans becomes a start for me this week, however, and he gets a pretty large boost if there's no Chris Godwin. Chris Godwin obviously sees a ton of volume, but Scotty Miller will slip into that slot role a little bit more. They'll get somebody on the outside, and Mike Evans becomes the wide receiver 1 on the team this week and becomes the big play guy this week as well. Hopefully him and Tom Brady are on the same page, but no Chris Godwin means a big jump for Mike Evans. So Chris Godwin now becomes a sit for me especially if he's hurt, because as of right now, it doesn't sound like he's going to be able to clear the protocol before Sunday. So Godwin switches over to a sit for me. Mike Evans switches over to a start. So again, just updating that information from the video the other day. At number 10, I have Amari Cooper. At number 9, JuJu Smith-Schuster. So with Amari Cooper, I'm going to continue to have him as a wide receiver 1. You've got Lamb. You've got Michael Gallup. He still saw 14 targets last week. He is still the go-to for Dak Prescott. Hopefully he continues to, do or have performances like he did last week. Hopefully he doesn't drop off the face of the earth this week against Atlanta. I wouldn't expect that to happen. Atlanta getting absolutely torched last week could end up happening again this week. Amari Cooper, another firm guy in my top 10. Lots of ceiling and a pretty good floor as well. Back to JuJu Smith-Schuster. He's looking like the JJSS of old, right? Comes out last week, scores a couple of touchdowns. And again, the reemergence of JJSS to me comes from his ability not moving back to the slot, okay? Because there was a misconception that the reason he didn't perform well last year is because he didn't play in the slot. No, he still played in the slot quite a bit. The thing is that if you have wide receivers on the outside that have developed the way Deontay Johnson and James Washington have, then that allows things to open up over the middle of the field. Okay, so things are opening up again for Smith-Schuster because of the emergence of Deontay Johnson and James Washington on the outside. Expect that to continue to work for this team. At number 8, Adam Thielen, a guy that, I missed on last week. You all keep telling me, don't worry, I know it. Trust me, I'm the one that missed. You don't have to keep telling me. But let me just kind of reiterate to you why I missed on Adam Thielen last week and why I probably won't be missing on him moving forward, because some of the things I thought about this Minnesota offense and defense didn't hold true last week. Number 1, the defense. The defense against Aaron Rodgers and the Packers was awful last week. Okay, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It was bad. Can they get back to being better, though? Do they bounce back? Is the defense we saw in week 1 the defense that we'll continue to see? If it is, then they're going to have to throw the ball a lot, and that takes out some of the scripted run game that I thought we might see continue to flow over from 2019 to 2020. So that was one thing that was concerning me about Adam Thielen. Positive game script due to a strong Minnesota Vikings defense and running the ball a lot. Number 2, what in the world happened to the Vikings tight ends? Where were they last week? I don't know, but they weren't included in the game plan. Like 3 combined targets for them? I thought we would see more from Irv Smith Jr. and Kyle Rudolph. Irv Smith maybe playing out in the slot a little bit, Kyle Rudolph on the line, getting those 2 guys into the game plan more. It didn't happen last week. I don't know why. Is it because it's not going to happen at all? Are we going to see them start to get into the game plan a little bit more as the season progresses? If they don't, then no, Adam Thielen will continue to perform as he did last week. But again, that's what I missed on was 2 things that I expected to happen in terms of the defense being a lot better and the tight ends being more involved, bringing down that ceiling on Adam Thielen and not giving him those opportunities. That didn't happen last week, okay? So that's something that we have to monitor moving forward. If they start to flow back to that, maybe we see some of that ceiling for Adam Thielen start to come down. But until I see it, I'm just going to say, hey, I got it wrong on Adam Thielen. Got to move forward, right? That happens. Calvin Ridley at number 7. Have both Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley inside the top 10 this week, going up against, of course, Dallas. This is a great opportunity for this team to absolutely eat this week. A matchup that should be back and forth as a whole. Calvin Ridley and Julio Jones should continue to see more than enough volume, and Calvin Ridley has touchdown upside every single week. Robert Woods, Bobby Trees at number 6. Heck of an opening week, right? Looked great in week 1. Looks like the wide receiver 1 on this team. Getting those short routes, getting those deep balls, can continue to see a lot of volume. Robert Woods is one of the safest wide receivers in all of football. And on top of that is a guy that's developing a nice ceiling as well. At number 5, Allen Robinson. Why did I choose this picture for Allen Robinson? Look at his eyes, ladies and gentlemen. Stare into the eyes of Allen Robinson for just a second. No, that is not intense gameplay on the field. You know what that look is on his eyes? That's him watching that Brinks truck back up here in a couple of weeks. A lot of people concerned about Allen Robinson because deletes all of his Bears information off social media. People panic. Is he being traded? Where is he going to? Blah, blah, blah. the Bears are going to get a deal done with Allen Robinson. Does it happen right away? No, probably not. But if not, it'll happen after the season. Allen Robinson probably is not going anywhere. If they do, they got to clean house in that front office then, because that would be an absolute mistake. Allen Robinson at number 5, tremendous ceiling this week against the New York Giants. Go ahead and continue to throw him out there as usual. Number 4, Tyreek Hill. Again, big playability. Last week, we saw Sammy Watkins really dig into Tyreek Hill's ceiling a little bit. Sammy Watkins is a start for me this week, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see some of that volume revert back to Tyreek Hill this week against the Chargers. So I like Sammy Watkins this week. There's a lot of wide receivers I like this week. It was hard to pick a top 30 this week. I'm not kidding. Sammy Watkins just outside of the top 30. DeAndre Hopkins, and the reason for that is, can we really trust him? I mean, that's part of it. Okay, yeah. When I do my rankings, I look mostly at upside, but when I do look at it, I'm like, gonna put a guy here that I don't really trust. I don't know if we trust Sammy Watkins yet. DeAndre Hopkins at number 3 continues to be a target hog, like he has his entire career, taken away from everyone there in Arizona. He's going to continue to get that, especially this week against Washington, so expect another good performance. Already talked about Julio Jones and Devontae Adams going up against a Detroit secondary. Jeff Okudah may end up being back. We don't know for sure yet. It's going to be close. But, man, that secondary is banged up. Expect a shootout against Detroit in Green Bay this week. And Devontae Adams can be the guy that sees the biggest performance because of that. So there you have it, Headliner Nation, my top 30 wide receivers for week 2 of the NFL season. Hopefully y'all don't hate them as much as you hated them last week. But let me know down in the comments below. Questions about anybody? I'll try to answer as many as I can. If you're new here to the Fantasy Headliners, hit that subscribe button. Become a part of Headliner Nation today. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be at 100,000 subscribers very, very soon. Help us on that road to 100K. It's going to happen, and we are excited and ready to celebrate. And also, as always, if you appreciate the comment, hit the like button on the video. Much appreciated, Headliner Nation. Hopefully everyone is staying safe, staying healthy. I'll catch you on the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.